My name is Evelyn Sinclair. I'm 34 years old, founder and CEO of Lynx Dynamics, a global tech empire built from sleepless nights, secondhand laptops, and people telling me I couldn't. And this morning, I was officially uninvited from my parents' anniversary party. Evelyn, about the anniversary soiree this Saturday, we've had a flood of RSVPs from your father's colleagues. Unfortunately, we'll need to rescind your invitation. I'm sure you understand, space is limited and these are important guests. The message from my mother glowed on my phone screen, cold and elegant like her signature pearls. I read it twice, then a third time. Not because it hurt. That kind of hurt had long calcified, but because I was still amazed at how far they'd go to pretend I didn't exist when the room got too prestigious for a daughter who plays with computers. They didn't just leave me out. They crossed me off. If you've ever been underestimated, excluded, or made to feel like the odd one out in your own family, this story is for you. Because while they were planning a party for the people they thought mattered, I was finalizing a business move that would shake their entire world. So before I tell you what happened next, the deals, the reveal, and the moment my mother realized who actually owned the hotel she booked, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment if you've ever been the black sheep that came back in a tailored suit. Because sometimes, when the door closes in your face, you don't knock again. You buy the whole building. My driver merged into Manhattan traffic while I stared out the tinted window of my Blacktown car. Just ahead, the skyline shimmered, and in its heart stood the 90-story tower I had built, the global headquarters of Lynx Dynamics. Inside that building, in less than 2 hours, I would be chairing an emergency board meeting. Not for my company, for theirs. My assistant's voice crackled through the speaker system. Ms. Sinclair, Davidson Industrials board members have all arrived. Their stock dropped another 14% this morning. I smiled slightly. Perfect timing. You see, my father, Charles Davidson, doesn't know that the mysterious tech CEO he's been begging to meet for a bailout is his own daughter. He doesn't know that for the past 18 months, I've been quietly acquiring shares in his company through shell subsidiaries. That while he scoffed at my little tech hobby, I was building a machine powerful enough to swallow his legacy whole. I remember the last family dinner, where he'd boasted, "We've secured a meeting with Lynx's elusive founder. The man never shows his face. Must be some eccentric genius. Certainly not like Evelyn. She's still tinkering with her little apps." Everyone laughed. Even my mother. They didn't know I was the one funding most of the political campaigns they praised. That the server their caterer used that night ran on Lynx infrastructure, that I'd bought their favorite golf club 6 months earlier, just to prove I could, but I didn't say a word, because sometimes silence is strategy, and anonymity. That's armor. They called me irrelevant, but this morning my father would walk into a boardroom, praying for salvation, and I would be sitting quietly at the end of that table, the solution in heels and an Armani blazer. He was expecting a savior. He was about to meet his reckoning. The elevator opened with a soft chime, revealing the penthouse-level boardroom of Lynx Tower. Polished marble floors, sweeping glass views of the Hudson, and a conference table longer than most Manhattan apartments. This was my terrain, my battlefield. But today, I wasn't here to defend my company. I was here to acquire theirs. My stilettos echoed softly as I walked in, unnoticed by the men clustered at the far end of the room, all in suits that screamed last decade, their faces tight with tension. My father was among them, pacing near the head of the table, clutching a leather folio like a life raft. His silver hair was a little more disheveled than usual, his voice clipped. "Has the CEO arrived yet?" he barked toward my assistant, who stood calmly near the door. She didn't glance my way. "They're here, just waiting for the right moment." I sat down at the opposite end of the table quietly. They didn't even blink. And why would they? In their eyes, I was still Evelyn, the odd daughter, the one who didn't follow the plan. I could still hear my mother's voice at every family gathering. "When will you come work for your father's company, dear? Stop playing with your algorithms and join a real business." They said real like it was a compliment, Like I hadn't spent the last decade building a tech empire that now powered governments, hospitals, global banks. But to them, it didn't matter, because I hadn't done it their way. My father had never once attended a Lynx product launch, never read an annual report. He saw my success as coincidence, a side note, a child's lucky break. He didn't know I was the keynote speaker at the last World Tech Forum, that I'd made Forbes's cover twice, that the company he was now begging for help, mine, had already absorbed 4 of his competitors without breaking a sweat. But that was about to change. He turned to the board and said, "This meeting could save our legacy. We just need this new tech firm to believe in us, to trust in our history." Legacy. Funny how they use that word to make you forget they never considered you part of it. I watched him, calm and silent, letting the moment stretch. He was looking for a lifeline, and he was about to discover that the only one who could save him was the daughter he'd spent a lifetime underestimating. The CEO was already in the room. He just hadn't looked hard enough to see her. The room fell into a hushed buzz as the final board member arrived. My father stood tall, but there was a tightness in his jaw, a tremble in his hand as he poured himself a glass of water. No one had to say it aloud. The company was bleeding out. And today, everyone hoped a mysterious savior from the tech world would arrive and offer a tourniquet. He cleared his throat. "Before we begin, has the CEO of LYNX Dynamics arrived?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I stood slowly from my seat at the far end of the table. "He has," I said calmly, "though in this case, it's she." My father turned toward the sound of my voice. Confusion etched across his face, then disbelief, then full-body shock. "Evelyn?" he choked out. What are you doing here? Where's the CEO?" "You're looking at her," I said, stepping forward, removing the sleek black folder from my briefcase. "Evelyn Sinclair, founder, majority shareholder, and CEO of LYNX Dynamics." The room froze. The air shifted. Executives glanced at each other. Several began discreetly typing into their phones, and seconds later, their faces paled as they read headline after headline. Silicon Valley's dark horse, Evelyn Sinclair of Lynx, breaks into global top 10. The woman behind the code, how Evelyn Sinclair quietly took over the tech world. My father's lips parted, but no sound came out. I kept my voice even. "I understand your confusion. It must be hard reconciling the daughter you thought was wasting her time with the CEO now offering to buy your company." This is absurd," he muttered. "You're not what?" I said sharply. "Not capable, not powerful, not worthy of a seat at this table?" He looked away. "You never asked what I was building," I continued. "Never attended a single event, never read a report, but that's all right. You didn't have to believe in me because I believed in myself." I tapped the screen behind me, and a projection lit up with side-by-side graphs, Davidson Industrial's decade-long decline and Lynx's meteoric rise. The numbers spoke louder than any words. "You mocked technology over dinner," I said, laughed at automation, scoffed at AI, but while you clung to the past, I built the future. The silence in the room was now heavy, real. "I didn't come here to humiliate you," I said finally. "I came here to offer a lifeline. But make no mistake, this isn't charity, it's business, and business requires clarity." I paused, then added softly, "The girl you erased from the guest list is now the only name that matters on the agenda." My father hadn't spoken in nearly a full minute. He just stared at the screen, blinking hard at the projections that laid bare what no amount of denial could hide. Davidson Industrial, his life's work, was sinking. Not slowly, rapidly, terminal. I turned to the board, keeping my voice composed, but with an edge honed by years of being talked over. "As you can see, your market share has declined for 11 consecutive quarters. The last 2 years alone have seen a 61% drop in valuation. Your refusal to adapt, to digitize operations, streamline logistics, or explore AI-integrated manufacturing has left you exposed." A few executives shifted in their chairs, uncomfortable but nodding. The truth had been chasing them for a while. I just gave it a microphone. Jessica, my chief strategy officer, stepped forward and handed out folders. Inside, you'll find a detailed acquisition proposal, I said. Lynx Dynamics currently owns 48% of Davidson Industrial through intermediary holdings. This offer is for the remaining shares, and yes, it's generous considering the circumstances. My father finally found his voice. You've been buying us behind my back? I didn't need your permission, I replied. This is public market business. You built a company on legacy. I built one on foresight. You can't just, I can, I cut in, and I did. I walked to the window, looking down at the city that had once made me feel invisible. Now it bowed to my code, my patents, my architecture. You thought success looked like corner offices and country clubs? I said, still facing the skyline. You mistook my silence for insignificance, but I wasn't hiding, Dad. I was preparing. He said nothing. My mother's name lit up on my phone again. Another text, probably about the party. Probably still oblivious to the financial implosion playing out in this room. I turned back to the board. I'm not here to gloat, I said, quieter now. I'm here to clean up a mess. One you created by refusing to see the future and by refusing to see me. A beat passed. Then I added, level and absolute. You asked for a miracle. What you got was a merger. Silence gripped the room like gravity. Even the skyline outside seemed to pause. The question is no longer whether Lynx will take over, I said. The only question is who among you will still have a seat when we do. Just then, my phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. Darling, I hope you're not too upset about the party. We just need to maintain a certain image. These guests are influential. I didn't respond. Instead, I tapped the message, swiped, and projected it onto the boardroom's central screen for everyone to see. There it was, in elegant text, punctuated by politeness and cruelty. The unspoken message, you don't belong in our world, Evelyn. Not at our party, not in our spotlight. My father squinted at the screen, recognition and embarrassment blooming across his face. Evelyn, that's private. No, I said calmly. It's telling. The executives glanced around awkwardly. Some tried to focus on the proposal folders in front of them. Others stared openly, caught between scandal and awe. I was uninvited because your party needed space for important people, I said, eyes steady. But you failed to notice that the most important person had already bought the venue. My assistant, standing discreetly near the doorway, took that as her cue. She stepped forward, tablet in hand. Ms. Sinclair, she said, the general manager at the Grand Marlowe is on the line. Shall I patch him through? I nodded. Moments later, the hotel manager's voice echoed through the speaker. Ms. Sinclair, as per your instructions, our renovation crew is arriving shortly. Shall we proceed with the full facility lockdown? Yes, I replied. Please cancel all scheduled events, refund deposits, notify guests personally. The room went utterly still. My father's face turned an alarming shade of gray. You can't do that, he whispered. That's our anniversary. We've invited senators, CEOs. You mean my colleagues, I corrected. People I work with, fundamental, employ, advise. He stumbled backward into his seat. What will people say? I gave a small, almost kind smile. They'll say the daughter you uninvited bought the building and closed the doors. Politely. Another executive let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. I turned toward the screen again, where the text from my mother still glowed beneath financial graphs and legal terms. You needed space for important guests, I said. Well, now you have it. And just like that, the party that was meant to showcase legacy and status became a footnote in a much bigger story, the day the unimportant daughter rewrote the guest list from the top down. The boardroom was silent. Not the awkward silence of uncertainty, but the stillness that follows an earthquake. My father looked like someone had just unplugged him from his own legacy. The executives sat straighter now, eyes darting between me and the acquisition documents, calculating their next allegiance. Then, without warning, the glass doors burst open. "Evelyn!" My mother's voice, shrill, urgent, trembling with social panic, cut through the silence like a blade. She swept into the room, still dressed in her tailored cream coat, pearls swinging as she waved her phone furiously. "The hotel just canceled the event, our anniversary party. Evelyn, what is going on? Do you have any idea who we invited? The mayor's wife, the Hendersons, the—" She stopped short. It took her a full 3 seconds to register where she was, and who was standing at the head of the table. Me, her daughter, the one she'd uninvited that very morning. Her eyes flicked to the massive screen, still displaying the party cancellation notice, financial graphs, and a headline that now read, "Links Dynamics to acquire Davidson Industrial in historic deal." She blinked. What? What is this?" I gestured to the empty seat beside my father. "This, Mother, is a board meeting. Your daughter, the one you didn't have space for, is acquiring Dad's company. Please, have a seat. You'll want to hear the terms." My assistant appeared calm as ever and slid a chair behind my mother. Dazed, she sank into it, clutching her phone like it might rewrite reality. My father finally spoke, voice low and hoarse. "She's the CEO, Marianne. Evelyn is the one we've been waiting for." "You—" "No," my mother said faintly. "You build apps. You play with computers. You don't do this." "I do now," I said. "In fact, I've been doing this for years. You just weren't paying attention." She looked genuinely lost, like someone had just rewritten the script of her life and handed her the wrong lines. I leaned forward slightly. "You taught me all about appearances, Mother. How to smile politely, how to sit still, how to stay small so others could feel important. But what you forgot is that while you were busy planning your guest list, I was building something no one could ignore." I looked around the room, a room full of people who now saw me clearly. "I'm not here to embarrass you," I said gently, "but I won't apologize for succeeding without your approval." My mother didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence in her seat said everything. My mother sat frozen in her chair, as if the air in the room had thickened. The elegance she always wrapped herself in, silk, pearls, polished smiles, was now cracking beneath the weight of something she couldn't control. Reality. I turned back to the board. "Let's proceed," I said, my tone crisp. "Jessica, are the acquisition packets ready for formal vote?" She stepped forward with practiced efficiency, handing out sleek black folders to each board member. "Inside," I explained, "you'll find our full offer for the remaining 52% of Davidson Industrial. Legal has already cleared the documentation. You'll note that the valuation is generous, considering your current debt ratio and projected Q3 losses." A low murmur rippled across the table. One of the older board members, Mr. Langford, someone I vaguely remembered from childhood barbecues, cleared his throat. This is more than fair," he admitted, flipping through the pages. "Frankly, it's the best outcome we could hope for." My father was silent. He didn't even open his folder, his fingers just curled tightly around the edges, like he could hold the company together with sheer will. "Charles," I said, addressing him directly, "I respect what you built. But you built it for another century. What I'm offering now is not just a buyout, it's survival." He finally looked at me, not as a nuisance, not as a disappointment, but as a leader. "And what happens to us?" he asked quietly. I held his gaze. "You'll retain an honorary position on the advisory board. No operational control, no veto rights." "And the rest of the team?" "Key personnel may reapply for positions under Linux. We'll conduct evaluations based on merit. Loyalty is no longer measured by bloodlines, but by competence." Gasps. Then silence. My mother finally spoke again. "But Evelyn, we're your family." I turned to her. "You're right. But in business, family doesn't grant immunity. especially not when they've spent years pretending their own daughter didn't belong. Jessica stepped beside me again. "Shall we begin the vote, Ms. Sinclair?" I gave a single nod. Hands began to rise, one after another, hesitant at first, then unanimous. The vote passed. Just like that, Davidson Industrial was no longer under their name. It now belonged to the daughter they'd left off the guest list. The final hands had been raised. The deal was done. Davidson Industrial, once the proud legacy of my father, was now officially part of the Lynx Dynamics portfolio. I looked around the boardroom one last time, the tension still lingering like smoke after a fire. Some board members were already typing updates to their teams. Others sat in stunned silence, letting the reality settle like dust on antique furniture. My parents, however, remained still. My father's hand rested on the acquisition folder, but he didn't move. My mother was staring at the marble tabletop like it might offer an alternate ending. I closed my folder and stood. "You asked what happens now," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. "What happens is growth, innovation, a future built on truth, not nostalgia." My assistant stepped forward, whispering, "Your helicopter's ready. Wheels up in 10. I nodded, then turned to face them both one last time. "You taught me many things," I said. "How to sit straight, how to stay silent in rooms I should have spoken in, how to accept being unseen, but the most powerful thing you ever taught me, unintentionally, what was this: rejection is a redirection." My father looked up, emotion caught somewhere between pride and shame. "I used to think success would finally earn your approval," I continued, softer now. "But I've learned something far more valuable. Success isn't about applause. It's about impact." I walked slowly to the head of the table, placing one manicured hand on the leather chair that used to belong to him. "You ran this room with legacy," I said, "but I run it now with vision." Then I turned to my mother, who finally looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Evelyn, is there any way we could still reschedule the party? Perhaps something smaller?" I smiled gently. "The Grand Marlowe will be under renovation for 6 months, but once it reopens as the LYNX Innovation Center, perhaps we can host something." A pause. Then I added, "If you're on the guest list, of course." And with that, I stepped toward the glass elevator, heels clicking like punctuation. Outside the window, the rotor blades of my private helicopter spun faster, the skyline glowing beneath the rising sun. Behind me, my parents sat in the ruins of their assumptions and the ashes of their control, watching the daughter they had uninvited ascend. The helicopter blades roared overhead, slicing through the morning sky as I stepped onto the rooftop helipad. The city stretched out beneath me, steel, glass, and legacy, but none of it intimidated me now. Not anymore. My assistant secured the folder of signed acquisition documents under her arm as she followed me into the aircraft. The door shut with a final, echoing hiss. A seal. A chapter closed. Within minutes, we were airborne. I watched as Davidson Tower, the place that once symbolized everything I wasn't allowed to be, grew smaller beneath us. My mother's pearls, my father's scowl, the long boardroom table they once ruled. All of it faded into the gray skyline like a memory I no longer needed to chase. Jessica, my chief strategy officer, looked up from her seat across the aisle. "Ready for Tokyo?" she asked with a small smile. I nodded, exhaling slowly. "Always." The jet would be waiting on the tarmac. We had a global merger to finalize, and I had a keynote to deliver by midnight. But for now, I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to feel, to remember. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from my father. "I signed the papers. You've outmaneuvered me completely. All these years I thought I was teaching you about business. Turns out you were mastering it in silence. Your mother is still stunned. The governor called. He's impressed. I think. I finally understand." I stared at the words for a long moment, not with triumph, but with clarity. Then I typed back, "Success isn't about invitations, Dad. It's not about dinner tables or guest lists or legacy plaques. It's about vision, Courage and the audacity to build something that lasts, even when no one's watching. See you at the next shareholders meeting. No RSVP needed. Your attendance is mandatory. The clouds below thickened, swallowing the ground in soft white silence. And still, I climbed. You see, I used to believe success looked like recognition, like applause, like being finally invited to the party you were always left out of. But now, I know better. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to demand a seat at their table, it's to build your own. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's excellence. So undeniable, so complete, that it makes every no you ever received irrelevant. They uninvited me from their celebration. I bought the venue. And when the time came, I didn't burn the bridge. I paved a new road. So, to anyone watching this, anyone who's ever been overlooked, doubted, dismissed, know this. You don't need their permission to matter. You don't need their approval to rise. And you sure as hell don't need their party to celebrate your worth. So if this story struck something inside you, if you've ever been the outsider who built their own empire, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because uninvited daughters? We make the best CEOs. We're used to creating our own opportunities, and we never forget who told us we couldn't.